tenets of the Naiji. We're now going to continue with the syllabus overview, and we'll be getting now into some more advanced topics. What makes them advanced is that what you saw in part 1, that gives you sort of the basic human design of the Naiji, our powers, some basic things like how you read us. That's foundational work in order to deal with more advanced topics, for example, spirit forms. Spirit forms, as you should know from watching the theory episodes on Popular Planet, is basically everything that is outside of our conscious understanding, which is a great many things, including all the forces of nature, our unconscious powers, the relationships between ourselves and others, the social alchemy, and many, many more things, mathematical principles, etc. But they relate differently to different mojos, and so we will talk a lot in Naiji Temple about how the particular spirit forms relate to us. Spirit forms often strike some people as a little whiffy. Naiji tend to be cooler with this than most. They tend to be predisposed towards spirituality. However, many Naiji are very into the sciences. That's their particular form of spirituality. So to them, the idea of spirituality is like, no, that's not me. It actually is. It's really an issue of semantics. A good place to begin getting in touch with spirit forms is with your conscious powers. For the Naiji, those are Nai, Ji, Zai, and Vi. These powers, although they are conscious, that's true, and we discussed them in part 1 as if they were like an engine underneath the hood of a car or a ship or something, and that's also true. However, that's more to kind of understand the nuts and bolts of how it operates, but kind of like a car, for example, most of your experience is not doing that. That just sort of happens on its own, and for you, it's more of a driving experience. For humans, that's spirit forming, including your own power. So, for example, if you want to get into your Nai, I get that question from people a lot, is how do I get into a particular power that they have? Like, how do I access that? And the thing that comes up commonly is you need to embody a character. That's the shortest thing. You have to embody a character that does that as part of the character. It's difficult to work powers directly because they can feel weird about that. If you actually try to work intuition, particularly Naiji. Naiji should understand this, work intuition, work charisma. It doesn't really work like that. It's much easier to try and reach out or to become a character that has those qualities as part of its composition. For the Naiji, that is the Nai one-way walker. That is the spirit form, the character in a heroic story that when we embody it, our Nai just naturally turns on and does what it has evolved to do for all this time. So the Nai knows what to do. You just have to contact it. And for us, that's easiest by trying to get into the headspace of the one-way walker. We will do whole episodes on most of these topics we're going to talk about. For example, the one-way walker. We'll do a whole episode just on that. The one-way walker is just one sort of universal label for really a character that the Naiji can play. It's very Nai heavy, and it can be in the future, in the past, it can be in any country, it can be in any career, it can be any non-career, it can be any relationship. The one-way walker can do what it does, which is walk its way. So for all of the pot power spirit forms, they can actually be accessed in any location at any time and be appropriate. But there are always which mode of you, which character of you, which facet of you would be best at a given situation. So if you want to really access your detachment, access your speculation, your visioning, try thinking like a wizard. Try feeling like a wizard. Try doing things that would make you feel like a visionary scientist, like an artist, any of these things that would make you feel like a person who's going to go their own way and get special insights that you only get from going your way. Next for the Naiji is Ji, the natural law teacher. When the Naiji gets its insights, there's a desire to want to put them into action. And so that can have nearly infinite ways of happening, but the natural law teacher spirit form of the Nai Ji is built to always do the best appropriate Ji for any situation. And thinking of trying to teach others or yourself through actions will naturally make the Ji turn on very strongly and very nobly. Over here we have the Zai hardcore humanist. Many Nai Ji are actually extremely familiar with the hardcore humanist because their life has sort of made them feel, because Nai Ji have a lot of things to deal with as far as sensitivities and whatnot, they need to be rather hardcore, or they feel the need. So often they identify heavily with that spirit form. And it's good to actually have a strong connection with all your spirit forms, but you need to know that you have all of them and which ones are the leader of the others. For us, it goes in this order. The one-way walker, that is the highest of our conscious pod power spirit forms. It is the one that actually takes lead as far as what the natural law teacher does. And these two, they take lead as far as what the hardcore humanist mode of the Nai Ji does. These pod power spirit forms and their ranking, for example, can throw people sometimes, because there is the natural ranking, but there's also the situational aspects. So for example, if a situation is actually sending very, 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 very strong signals, acute, high-stakes signals that require your hardcore humanist side to come out, then that can preempt the higher ranked spirit forms over here. And that's proper as an emergency mechanism. So that's sort of like the CEO of a really cool company that's going to save the world, and now there is a attack upon the company or the tribe or the person, the leader. And so the security team, they come in, they protect the CEO, which is good. They come in, they're hardcore, they don't let anything happen to the CEO. But then they're supposed to get the CEO out of danger, and then the CEO is supposed to go back to taking control of things and being the orchestrator of the destiny of the company. So you don't let the security response team tell the company what to do, although the security response team may take extreme tactical measures in a short period of time in order to save the higher ranked, say, CEO in this analogy. Finally, for the conscious powers, we have V, and for the Nai Ji, that is embodied by the frenzied fanatic. This can throw a lot of Nai Ji because they can feel uncomfortable in that state, which means they're not as experienced with it as they should be, because actually being more experienced with your frenzied state allows you to turn on and off more your control and be able to know when will be the best time to do that and what are the options you have. What kinds of frenzy are they? When can you do them? What kind of results can they make for you? Once you understand that, then it's kind of like playing with extremely potent spells. But this is often done, for example, in Nai Ji, in extremely incredible athletic performances, acting performances, scientific breakthroughs, the ability to actually frenzy in order to just follow something that almost seems like it's inhuman to chase that. But you need to to chase it, and you do what you gotta do. You do what you gotta do. That quality, that's the frenzied fanatic. You will do what you gotta do to chase that vision down. So that's very powerful, but it can be very extreme. So Nai Ji need to know what it is, otherwise they can get to where they try to chain that down, or they let it out of the box, but they don't do it appropriately. They do it for things that really is not meant for it. As part of Nai Ji Temple, we will also go into the elevator of enlightenment that takes you through all your powers, particularly taking you into the unconscious areas. Your conscious powers and your conscious awareness of them, that is your apparatus. So for us being Nai Ji, that's going to be mainly made up of Nai and Ji, and with some also Zai and V, and the calling, the unconscious, calling to us of the Ni, Jai, Z, and Vi. that is our basic understanding of us. That's our apparatus. That's what is you. That's what I think of as me. When I think of me, I'm actually thinking of my apparatus, which is my conscious awareness of my powers, which is primarily Ni and G with some Xi and V, and I can feel into my unconscious for the other four. That's what I know of me, and that's what you know of you. It's a question of how much we've expanded that range, but that is the area that I and you work in. There's, of course, the self you know, and then there's the self that you present to the world. This can be a facade, or it can simply be like a facet. Your true self having many facets like a gem, and you present certain facets in certain lights in order to get the best sparkle. For us being Naiji, our awareness is going to be very strongly associated with our insights and how people do things, good and bad, and how much we know of that versus how much we can or should say. There's a disconnect there, and the Naiji of all the mojos has a very strong awareness of the apparatus and Mazout relationship. The Mazout being this facade, this character you play. It's not a bad thing. You need to have that. But for the Naiji, we'll be keenly aware. Having the Nai with the Ji, we're very aware of the behavior you're supposed to do because the environment expects that, but then being piped in a signal from natural law of like what natural law says is supposed to happen. And there's always a compromise of exactly how much you are aware that natural law would like a situation to be versus how much technically and culturally it will allow for at the moment. There's always some sort of discomfiture there. But that's a good thing because that discomfiture that Naiji have allows us to be very aware of our Mazouts, which keeps them more often than not from possessing us. Well, maybe not more often than not, but more often than it does for others. I think all humans actually get possessed by Mazout way more than they should, including the Naiji. But Naiji have tools to be more aware of that than others. We're very aware of the fact that we are an apparatus and that we have a highly developed Mazout system of facets of ourself that we show. We're very aware of what part of ourself, what part of a story, telling a story ABC or CBA or BAC. Naiji think like this. All those are technically true, but depending on which order you tell the story, the audience could have vastly different reactions. So that editing of your behavior and being aware of it, that is our Mazout. Now we have the subconscious powers. This is the powers that are not completely unconscious, but they are fairly unconscious. For us, that is a lot to do with Xi and V. These powers they're conscious. We have a conscious access to them. Like right now, I go to my Xi, I Xi a lot as I need to, but there's a lot of that area I don't have, not consciously. So even though it's a conscious power, as it goes further away from my source, I know less and less of that terrain. So there is a wariness towards going to that area. Naiji may not know this. For example, many Naiji actually are very into the sciences, and so they feel very comfortable in science as far as like logic. But a lot of times it's really the intuitive part of the scientific discovery process that's the more pleasurable. And the logic is something they need to do, although they may be confused about this and would definitely think of themselves as a logic-based mojo. However, whenever a Naiji does this, whether they do it willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly, the more time you spend over there, you will get tired and you'll get confused. So you have to keep coming back over here to kind of get more air. If you don't do that, you'll begin to feel innervated. Most Naiji actually feel bouts of intense innervation where they just lose physical energy, like the will to get out of bed, the will to do anything, and then all of a sudden they have intense interest in things, almost too much interest. So a lot of that has to do with being able to know what your spirits are doing. And now, as we get over towards the subconscious area, the Daryu area, as we call that, we're getting into areas that if you don't pay attention to them, they can get you out of the blue. They can actually really throw you around because it'll seem like it came out of nowhere. So although I have very strong Zai, I do have to reach for it. See that? I have to reach for Zai. This is a physical, kind of way of showing that I reach for it. That means every time I'm not reaching for it, which I need to do my main powers, there's stuff happening in the logic-based channel that I'm not tracking. As a Naiji, you need to be aware of that. You need to be aware that there is that sort of blind spot for you, and that if you obsess about that blind spot, you'll actually spend all your time doing Daryu and you'll get very, very tired and very, very cranky. Now we have definitely the unconscious powers. For us, that's Ni and Jai. That's our unconscious other. For us, that is the Ni Jai, which will be of, doesn't need to have a gender. It actually is a creature that can be a land, it can be travel, it can be a hobby, it can be a passion, anything like that. But it does often take a physical form, and when that happens, it is of the gender that you would find most attractive. So it is the most appealing creature that your psyche can handle, and just barely. As mentioned in part 1, in peak pathways, you need to be able to access your unconscious powers. You're not going to be able to do it directly. That's the key thing. As I mentioned before, I have Ni and Jai and Zi and Vi, but for me, they're not directly held by the construct I think of as me, which is a Naiji. There is a Ni Jai in my unconscious that if I speak to this creature as an other, then I will get all those gifts. Like, that's how it's designed to work. I'm designed to actually get all the Ni and Jai and Zi and Vi I need by dialoguing with a creature in my unconscious that's in charge of all that. That would be my other. If you are Naiji, you operate the same way. The only difference will be the gender and sexual orientation and the specific manifestations in nature and travel, transportation, anything like that it takes. But the basic powers will be the same for all Naiji, for their other, which is Ni, Jai, Zi, and Vi, and the fact that accessing them is best done by treating it as a friend, your best friend, your lover in your psyche, and that if you dialogue with it like an artist does with a muse, you will get great generosity from this creature. But if you attempt to treat it mechanically, it won't work that well. That's for all people, but definitely Naiji. For Naiji, definitely your muse, your other, is a Ni Jai and likes to be treated accordingly. This is definitely unconscious, it's going deep, deep unconscious, but you can still dialogue with it some, is the Fumasta. For the Naiji, this is when we have all our powers, which is Naiji, Zai Vi, Ni Jai, Zi, and Vi all together. And we'll talk this later in the filming about synomnia and synesthesia and synesthesion, and those are all true, but there's a bit more of a technical way of understanding the experience. What actually happens for a Naiji, where you're having like all your powers, you'll feel like a certain kind of person, a certain version of you. That will be the easiest and most constant way for you to actually get in contact with your higher powers, is to actually find out how your Fumasta sees itself in your mind. It will use impressive heroes that you come in contact with through your education in life, and then try and teach you what it wants you to be as far as the best you. When you enact this, you will do the requirements that make that creature in you, that highest you, approve of the way you are living your life. It's very difficult to get Fumasta approval, but if you do, you get the full flood of all your 8 powers as best as you can, which is superhuman, to stay on the highly heroic course that you have chosen. You and your Fu Master will have to dialogue like a mentor to a mentee of what you would need to do, what kind of life decisions you would have to do, what kind of heroic efforts, what kind of rituals you would need to do in order to be the one. That's what your Fu Master does. It tells you what you need to do in order to be the one, and then when you are the one, it gives you all the powers the one deserves. Now we'll do a quick overview of some of the hot topics that will be discussed here in Naiji Temple. There are many topics that will come up. This is just sort of a beginning sample, but when people have come in and Naiji kind of start down this training of finding out about themselves, there have been a few topics that consistently seem to actually garner a lot of attention and interest, and so we want to put them out right from the beginning as a buffet for you. But this is just a starting place. So ask any questions that you want for the Naiji, and I'll do my best to answer them, and we'll open up even new hot topics. In Pod Layer theory, the horography is a way of looking at yourself that includes your pod powers, your spirit forms, social alchemy, all the aspects of you, taking it all in. So you have the greatest, most complete way of looking at your life. So if you're going to life coach yourself, that is the best tool to do. So for the Naiji, that has a special interest. I mean, it's supremely important to all mojos, but the Naiji often feel, of all the mojos, the strongest disconnect between what their way wants, what their mojo want, what their peak pathway wants, what their spirit forms want, that and what the world is asking for, what the world is validating, what the world is paying for these days. So that's something that actually must be accounted for being a Naiji. And the horography will allow you to realize you have to take care of your life, you have to eat food, you have to pay bills, you actually have to put your work out in some way that people can understand you. There are certain things you have to do, but it should come from the context of the horography. And for a Naiji, that will actually mean validating your visions. It'll mean validating your passions and so forth, your imagination, things that will get to logical and practical application, but they have to go the way they go, and your spirits need to be honored in the way they were built. They'll give you everything you need, but you need to honor them in the way they need to be honored. We'll be talking a lot in this series, as well as most of the other series, about the PICN, the Pod Layer Intentional Community Network. That is important for everyone in Pod Layer. It's the vision that we're all striving for, and the Naiji have a particular place in that. So that's a way of actually seeing the way Naiji from all over planet Earth had a common cause, how the powers that they were born with, the gifts that Gaia gave them, that there's a reason, there's a grand cause that all Naiji from planet Earth can rally around. We can all get behind this one. The fact that we're all humans, the fact that we need to all work together as one productive, harmonious tribe, and that's totally possible. And in fact, not only possible, it's the evolved state we're in. We're denying that evolved state. So Naiji, this is our game. This is exactly the part of the ocean pond we swim in, okay, the deep waters. So let's get to it. In Pod Layer theory, you have synomnia, synesthesia, synesthesion. I won't go too much in detail on that. They're done in other filmings. But basically they involve your perceptions and your discernments and all of them together. How you do that, what it feels like, sharing the experiences with other mojo. As Naiji, we'll spend a lot of time talking about what it feels like for one another when we're feeling synesthesia, synomnia, what caused it to happen. Did we do it on purpose? Did it happen accidentally? Did it go the way we thought it would go? Is it something that's one-off? Can it be repeated? We want to share this knowledge, show and tell how we do that. In technical terms, for example, as a Naiji, my synesthesia is, perception, so that's actually going to be my Nai most of the time. But then I do have the V that comes in more consciously, but as far as energetic effect, it's actually Ni. So having the Nai with either the V and or the Ni, that's a common synesthesia for us to have. So the hardest one is back over here, Vi. Getting that fourth perception, that's the deepest and most profound and complete synesthesia for the Naiji. Synesthesion works quite similarly, which is for us Ji, that's our primary decision-making process, our discernment process. But we have Zai, as you talked about, and Ji and Zai, they talk to each other quite a bit. But from the unconscious realm, we actually have Zhai. And Zhai's unconscious for us, but it's actually more powerful energetically than the Zai. So the Zhez is stronger for us than the Zez. But when we're working with synesthesion, in order to have the complete one, you would actually have to have all four. That would include our Ji that we start with, the Zai that we can get to pretty good on our own consciously. Unconsciously, we have Zhai, and then over here we have deep unconscious Z. So Z and Vi, those are the powers that are the furthest for us, and when we get them, allow us to reach the highest forms of synesthesia. However, if you go directly for them, if you try to actually just go right for, say, Vi or right for Z, you won't get anything. So you got to kind of think of it sort of like doing a clean and jerk, kind of Olympic lifting, you know, those kind of snatch, clean and jerk. You need to do the move in the right sequence to build momentum in order to sort of fling the weight there. If you try just brute force lift that, you will lift very, very little and you'll get tired quickly. We'll talk a great deal about reading here, as reading mojos is something that is important for all humans to be able to do, but there are degrees of reading, so it's an infinite level you can go to in a discipline. Naiji are going to have the natural gifts and the desire, which is, I guess, another form of gift in this context, of reading mojos, of reading souls. Us, as well as the other Zhez hunter, the Vaiji, we actually, as part of our heroic story, need to be able to read people. So that's a role that we'll be doing quite a bit, and we'll discuss how our configuration, Nai with Ji, Zai and Vi, how that works. It allows us to span the breadth of a situation, including a person and how they work, taking in all the particular visceral aesthetic cues and giving it deep meaning. And not just deep meaning for a person, sort of like a math to it. Taking humans and actually trying to figure out what are the real life RPG rules for this role-playing game. What are the rules of nature? What are the natural laws that make humans work? That desire actually helps a great deal with actually reading humans. And then, of course, the Nijai is also very naturally gifted at reading mojos as well. Again, because the Nijez, as part of their storyline, it's very important that they actually know what the moods of others are in order to know how to best use their Zhez discernment power. So for that reason, if the Naiji is able to get in touch with their other, they'll have even more bonus stacking on their ability to read mojos. So within the PICN, the creating of it, there's going to be a need to have like an elite team of readers. I want any and all mojos who can and qualify for that. There should be any number of mojos doing that. But I, as the person who's leading up this Naiji temple, I expect us to produce a lot of elite readers. Okay, so the other temples, they'll have their own ways, but here in Naiji Temple, if you're here with me, you are going to become an elite mojo reader, a soul reader. Naiji have a great vastness to the variety they have as far as manifesting, which is an awesome gift. But the awesomeness of the gift can be stunning. It can be confusing exactly what to do with it. There's a lot to this, and so in Podler theory, I like to give starting points. So starting point is the subsignals. For example, with Nai, there is the positive signals of being independent-minded, of having visionary drive, of being holding your own against opposition opinion. that's a good thing. But there's negatives to that, such as being an egomaniac, of driving too hard, trying to force something that's not there. Visionary drive is good, but trying to force something. And again, the sort of noble fanaticism that Nai provides, particularly when you combine it with Ji, that noble fanaticism is good if it's going the right way. If it's going the wrong way, then it's bad. So there's a fine line between being extremely persuasive and being belligerent. Now we're starting to bring in the Ji. There's a line between being diplomatic, being sensitive to people's feelings, and being deceitful, being manipulative. So we'll go over more of this, and this operates also over here, but we'll start primarily with these. But Zai is important as well, and V, because people who are V'd up, and Zai'd up, a term we use a lot, that means that they're distinct signals that come from those powers, that they are not giving off a good signal. Kind of like an engine in a car. When it's not doing something correctly, it makes a bad sound, and a skillful mechanic, they can actually listen and almost tell what's wrong with the car, as a physician can with the person sometimes, just by these sort of external factors or this sort of keening sound. So we'll go over how the powers we have, the 4 conscious powers, how they give off those signals, and how to interpret feedback from the environment. That's important because not everyone's going to interpret your powers in a good light. So sometimes the reaction you're getting is because people don't interpret your signals correctly. Noble independence of mind can often ruffle feathers. That doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. But there's times, for example, when maybe you are bothering someone whose opinion, both as far as wisdom and as far as code of conduct and virtue and authenticity, you actually appreciate. And they're having a problem with your, say, independence of mind. They're maybe feeling that you are being egotistical. You'll want to get good at actually knowing, is that true? And what should I do about that? So that's a constant thing of your signals, being aware that your 4 powers, particularly your top 2, they give out a constant signal, and how is the world reacting to that, and what does that mean? In Pottery theory, we use the 5 gears of mojo reading in order to teach the basics of how you read another person's mojo. The 4th gear involves dealing with riffs, which is when you can identify a similarity in a person's physiology or their development or the particular style in which they play their powers. And those who are trained in mojo reading, they would also pick this up independent of another person. They're like, yes, that similarity is there. The way you can compare, for example, certain Dutch masters, the way they paint, you can say that's like a Rembrandt. And if it actually is like a Rembrandt, those who are trained in those paintings and know what they look like, you're right, it does look like a Rembrandt. So that's a very powerful tool, and that can sound very clumsy, but actually done properly, it's a very fine artistic palette. So it's very sophisticated, very nuanced, very subtle. It's actually one that, as Nai Ji, you will find one of your strongest. That's actually one of your absolute strongest, so it's one we'll spend a lot of time on. This includes classifying riffs of Nai Ji. There's all kinds of riffs, and most Nai Ji that you'll meet, they actually would fall in a multitude of riffs. So, for example, myself, I actually am all kinds of different riffs. I'm like a feral wizard. There's another one we call is like the BAM spectrum, which is the bearded angry man. There's a lot of Nai Ji that fall into that. They can be, mathematicians. They can be, singing artists. They can be revolutionaries, but the bearded angry man is actually quite popular. So these are nice shorthands that actually help identify a phenomenon that is there. I just happened to notice when reading Nai Ji that a lot of them are sporting the beard and they look intense. And it somehow seems to actually accentuate their independence of mind. That seems to be a vibe that goes along with that. So it's not just an aesthetics thing. There seems to be a certain energetics that goes along with that look. And so that's a shorthand, so that if you're seeing that, you can say, oh, there's a BAM, and if it is a BAM, that's a bearded angry man Naiji, then others who are trained can look and they can agree or disagree, and if they agree, you are all instantly like reading a work of art together at a high level. You've made a high level compare and contrast on a work of art in a museum. That's what you just did, and that's the kind of way that the Naiji should always be looking at other humans, and that's how we're trained to do it here. Fozen is a term you'll hear a lot, and that's because, as you've probably noticed already from part one, a lot of Naiji very fond of the Zai. So this actually gives them the feeling of, I'm in equilibrium. They're not, and it doesn't seem the same at all comparing a Naiji using a lot of Zai to an actual Zai mojo like a Demas. A Demas is a Zai-Ni. So when you look at him, that's what an actual Zai Alpha looks like. Naiji are not like this, although a lot of them think they are. There's a lot of Naiji that think they're a Zai-Ni or a Zai-B or something of the sort, Shiny. That all comes from them thinking that equilibrium is where it's at. And equilibrium is very important, but for us, it's actually our offside priority. We call it Fozen because, kind of like faux leather, Naiji tend to like to sell, to persuade, to pitch people on what they believe to be the better way. So for us, that involves pushing our concept of what truth is. A lot of Naiji have actually bumped into and created models where letting nothing bother you is the answer. And so there can be a belief that that is the thing to be, but that's not taking into account the unique peak pathway of the Naiji, which is why it's Fozen, because in order to be that at equilibrium, you would actually have to be turning on your Zai to the extent that it was sublimating the Naiji, and that's just straight up mathematically incorrect. And so it's not going to be real Zen. It's going to be a chilly parking brake. The Nai simulator is responsible for some amazing things on planet Earth, from architecture to artwork to scientific breakthroughs to good revolutions, bad revolutions. We'll get into some other stuff about that as well, but the Nai simulator is a juggernaut of imagination. It's something that as a Naiji you'll want to become very, very familiar with and make your best friend, because it's like a visionary Hulk. And if you don't actually know what to do with it, it'll just go rampaging around in there. You probably all experienced that. If you're Naiji, you know what I'm talking about when your visionary Hulk goes on a rampage. So it's a good idea to actually know that happens and actually understand it, and then you can kind of fly it like you're a dragon rider. But you'll have to know how to handle that creature. That creature is actually you, so you're supposed to do that. Being a Naiji can be lonely, so we tend to have the lone wolf thing going on a lot. But we can have companionship, and we want companionship. We are Jimojos. Relationships are very important to us, but we tend to actually like to keep things rather small, tight, trustworthy, elite, special. We like it to be a spiritual connection. We like to be around people that we actually can feel that degree of trust and respect with. With the Naiji, there's definitely a phenomenon of like packing together like a collection of loners in order to do really extreme, cool stuff to get like spiritual highs. This can be almost anything. It can be scientific discovery. It can be extreme sports. It can be going into seclusion, but going on maybe like fasting or vows of silence with your close band of patriots. That's what we'll talk a lot about, and it's important to the Naiji, and it's actually a very good thing. But wolf packs, there is an etiquette to how you meet another wolf pack member, how you create a wolf pack, how the wolf pack interacts with having such large egos around. As you've seen, for example, in music, there's lots of Naiji music. We are extremely dominant in music, and Therefore, a lot of bands that you may be aware of have a lot of Naiji in them, where there's 3, 4, 5, 6 people in a band, and sometimes all of them are Naiji. Some bands are able to do this successfully for years and it's happy. Others are not able to do it at all. And sometimes you have people that actually have the band get together and break apart, and that's actually a good peaceful process that happens over time, and other times it's a chaotic, messy process. All of that is Wolfpack dynamics. In Naiji Temple, as with other temples, you'll be expected to experience the mentee-mentor relationship, so that you learn as a mentee, but you're expected to teach back as a mentor, both as a way of paying back the knowledge that you learned and as a way of actually sealing that knowledge into you, really making it a part of you. In order to do that, you don't just learn it, you have to teach it. If you're able to teach it, then that means that you yourself have actually digested it. This is especially important for Naiji because not only is the mentee-mentor relationship crucial for all mojos, the Naiji have a special affinity for the teacher-student relationship. We feel most comfortable in the role of a student or a teacher or both. And again, similar to Wolfpacks, there is an etiquette, a way of being the teacher, of being the student, and transitioning between the two and back and forth between the two. So as Naiji, you'll want to be very good at that because that's a cornerstone for the way your life operates. So if you do that quite well, your life will go well. If you don't, life will be difficult because not taking the world through the student-teacher dichotomy, not addressing the world in that way, will make things difficult because that's how you're made to do it. Although the world will often want to make the dichotomy of successful, unsuccessful, of leader, subordinate. But those are labels and contexts that actually cloud the primary one of most importance to the Naiji, which is teacher-student, which in the end, to be the best student, you actually must think like a teacher. In order to be the best teacher, you must think like a student. And it sounds simple, but it's actually infinitely sophisticated in application. That's something that here at Naiji Temple we'll be doing a lot with, and we'll be doing with consistently in teaching others and learning from others, from other Naiji. As we expand the Naiji Temple, we'll be teaching them what we know about being Naiji, but in their lands and their ways, they have instinctually or through conscious thought exerted themselves to where they've learned how to do some cool Naiji stuff. And we can learn tricks from them. And so we're always teaching and learning. And for us, it'll be the purest and most noble way to make and maintain friendships. The Naiji configuration creates a very complex nature. It's not mathematically more complex necessarily because all the mojos have 8 powers that have these relationships, so that math is the same as far as complexity. It's just in how it feels and in how it manifests. It can seem more complex than other mojos because there is a lot of intense activity that happens in here, and then when it transitions out here, it tends to be both not exactly what it seemed like it was going to go from in here. That's one element, and it's extreme. So for Naiji, going back to the simulator and things like that, what will come from our inner world to our outer world, it's going to be a vast gulf that we'll have to bridge. Also, on top of that, is the fact that because of that, the energy it takes for the Naiji to go from their inner world to the outer world is very far. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of visionary drive, a lot of willpower. What seems like normal to us will often catch other people as very extreme because we spend a lot of our time held within. Those resources are not often available to the world. The world's unaware of them. And then all of a sudden they will become in the world and it will be stunning to people. That surprise factor is a lot of our spells are based on that, which is cool. But we also have to know that it may affect the environment in negative ways that we don't want, and so we should be aware of when and where we set our spells off. This relates to the Ji of the Naiji, which can often seem quite different in the way it manifests from the Ji of the other Ji mojos, like the Vai Ji, the Ji Nai, and the Ji Vai. This is because our Ji is subordinate, like the Vai Ji is also, their Ji is subordinate to the worldview, but the worldview that we have is a conceptual, visionary, original, unprecedented, independent-minded worldview. And so it can come out in art, it can come out in music, it can come out in writing, it can come out in communing with nature, dealing with animals, taking care of a sacred piece of land. There's all kinds of ways that the Ji can have a very strong connection for a Naiji, but other mojos, even other Ji mojos, wouldn't necessarily interpret that as Ji because it has such a visionary, artistic, and spiritual vibe to it. Monologuing. Yes, monologuing is fun. Monologuing is more than fun. It's necessary. It's like the life's blood for Naiji. It's what you do with all your insights, because you may have noticed that as an Naiji, you're very interested in gaining insights and collecting them. And over time, you just have to do something with them. And that involves monologuing, which is actually a strong element of the Ji that Naiji have, the way we like to do it. We like to actually store a lot up, and then when we start talking, and that be talking through painting, for example, we like to go. We like to write books, we like to do long projects, we like to actually set up institutions, we like to actually forge entire communities. These are all monologues of us to the world, of what we think natural law should be like. So yeah, that's kind of natural law teacher. Our natural law teacher likes to monologue, and there's so many ways that you can do that. Naiji find pretty much anywhere they are. They can be in places where you're specifically trying to give them no access at all to being able to do that, and still they find a way. They find a way to teach, to monologue. You can monologue through silence. Silence can be a monologue. Refusing to eat can be a monologue. So there's lots of ways that a monologue can happen, and Naiji are fond of and good at just about all of them.